Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. I would like to call our January 14, 2020 council meeting to order, and I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Chambers.
Here.
Dr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Mullins.
Here.
Mr. Reynolds.
Here.
Ms. Shinholster.
Here.
Ms. Walden.
Here.
We do have a quorum present. If you will, please stand with me for our prayer and pledge. And Ms. Quentin T. Howe is going to do the prayer for us tonight.
With all heads bowed. Lord God, we come to you. Thank you for your grace and your mercy, Lord God. We come to thank you for each and every single individual in this room. We thank you for the ones who have offered themselves up as leadership and unselfishly give of themselves on a day-to-day basis. We thank you. We ask you blessings upon them, their families, and their decisions. Lord God, we ask for each and every one who didn't find robbery to come in this house to be able to lead this community, make decisions, and view their government at work. We ask that all decisions be made gladly within your light. We ask the blessings in your son's name as we have blessings upon this city, this county, and this country. We ask the blessing in your son's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. I would like to ask the wastewater superintendent and the members of our FOG team to please step forward. One of my favorite things to do at these council meetings is to recognize the achievements of our employees and to highlight the things that they do on a daily basis that we may never know about as elected officials or as citizens. A few years ago, the city realized there was a problem with fats, oils, and greases, also known as fog, clogging our wastewater system and generally causing problems. In an effort to be proactive, the Water and Sewer Department Director and our wastewater plant managers worked together to develop a complete set of guidelines, educational programs, and diligent monitoring practices to lessen the great burden on our systems. As a result of their work, I am pleased to present our FOG team with the Southeastern FOG Alliance's Program of the Year Award for 2019 and to thank our employees for their efforts. So at this time, I'm going to present this award to Mr. Robert Haddon, Miss Jeanette, and Miss Amanda, and I'm missing somebody's name. Mr. Raff. Okay.
You don't want to get in the front.
Thank you all for your hard work. I don't know what Ball and Bulletin guy was doing all down on the floor. I hope he didn't get our feet. At this time, I would like to invite the participants in the MLK proclamation to join me. That's Mr. George Hogan, the chair, and Mr. Quentin T. Howell, the vice chair, please. We again join to celebrate the life of one of our nation's greatest leaders, and it's always an honor to highlight the teachings, the work, and the memorial of Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. As I present this proclamation, I will ask the clerk to please read the proclamation into the minutes of this meeting as a permanent reminder of the great sacrifice and even greater accomplishment of Reverend King.
Proclamation, Office of the Mayor. Whereas seldom comes before the people of the world a man who is willing to suffer physical abuse, verbal degradation, or lay down his own life solely for the purpose of eliminating social injustice in this world. And whereas while threats and acts of violence is many a person's method to achieve change, it is the peace-loving man who can accomplish social reform with kind deeds as an example, words of societal peace, expressions of mutual respect, and an underlying love for all mankind. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr., a pastor, humanitarian, and leader in the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s, fought for racial and economic justice, who is lauded for his nonviolent approach to civil disobedience. And whereas Reverend King made an incredible impact on the country's racial, cultural, and intellectual landscape through his methods and teachings. And whereas we are forever indebted to him for his contributions to equality, and it is proper and fitting to highlight the life of a man who has had such a profound impact on changing an entire nation. Now therefore I, Mary Parham Copeland, as mayor of the city of Milledgeville, do hereby proclaim Monday, January 20th, 2020, as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the city of Milledgeville to honor a person who used the power of words and acts of nonviolent resistance, such as protests, grassroots organizing, and civil disobedience to achieve seemingly impossible goals.
All right, you all have received a copy of the December 10th, 2019 council meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or any discussions? Do I hear a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Ms. Walden.
Aye.
The minutes are adopted as official. We have one public hearing tonight to consider ordinance 1911-23 to allow the special use overlay for 241 East Montgomery Street. The procedure for conducting the hearing to amend the Land Development Code will be as follows. Once it has been determined that this public hearing has been properly posted and advertised, the clerk will read the proposed amendment to the Land Development Code. We will then hear a report from Planning and Zoning Director, including advisory decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Council will first hear from the applicant and anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment. We will then hear from anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the amendment. If anyone speaks in opposition to the amendment, we will then give the applicant an opportunity for rebuttal, but the rebuttal must be limited to the points or issues raised by the opposition. Please make sure that before you speak that you give your name and address for the record. Has this public hearing been properly posted and advertised?
Yes, ma'am, it has been.
I will ask the clerk to read the ordinance by caption.
An ordinance amending the ordinance passed and adopted on the 10th day of December 2002, known as the Land Development Code of the City of Milledgeville, Georgia. Ordinance grants a special use for group residence overlay. The property is located at 241 East Montgomery Street.
I will recognize the zoning administrator for a report to include the advisory decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ms. Merva.
Aye. This was unanimously denied at the Planning and Zoning meeting, and tonight this hearing is just for the overlay. If the overlay is granted, then he will come back as to what he's planning on using the home for in the overlay. Any questions?
Then it go back to planning and zoning?
Yeah, so everything will go back to planning and zoning if this is approved, because he will have to submit then if he wants fraternity, sorority, or just 6 people or 10 people. He'll have to show his parking and all that. If the overlay is granted, then he will go back.
Any other questions, council, before we allow the applicants to speak? Okay, is the applicant or anyone else present who would like to speak in favor of this amendment? If you will step to the podium, please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Richard Sims. I am delighted to live in the city of Milledgeville at 330 West Green Street. It's my home and my residential office. And Jimmy Jordan, I would like to borrow the clicker, which is sitting right there. I want to thank the members of the community that showed up tonight, and serving myself on board of directors of local nonprofits and having volunteered for 6 years on the Historic Preservation Commission, I recognize the altruism and the spirit of service that our elected city council and mayor have here in serving the best interests of this community. So it is my privilege to make this presentation and to ask for your support. And just to reiterate what Ms. Graham said, that I'm asking for permission to come back and ask for permission. So this is just the introductory to the work that I'm proposing to do to this lovely national listed historic home. I wanted to start with a photo where it may surprise some people in this room that I was actually present in a celebration for the inauguration of the new mayor in the city of Atlanta. I love the state of Georgia as well. And what I'm speaking about tonight is all about people. It's about relationships. It's about employment. It's about humanity. Here are 2 wonderful ladies that have been in my employment very long term, and they're local, and they work with this business in the daily management. They're trained. They've been to college. Their children have been to college. Each lady has a son that has served in Afghanistan. It's my pleasure to employ local businesses, local contractors, local licensed specialty people, as well as my own staff. And it's a pleasure to do our construction in full compliance with building code, in full compliance with fire code. We do everything to the top notch. We follow the U.S. Department of Interior guidelines for historic preservation. It's a fun community to live. It's a fun community to work. And I'm delighted I get to walk to work, which is not a common thing by people in our state. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over now to my attorney, Matt Rossing. Matt is a beloved college professor and son-in-law of Dr. Bob Wilson, our local historian at Georgia College.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt Ressing. I live at 2171 Flat Rock Road in Watkinsville, but I practice law here in Milledgeville. My office is at 620 Broad Street in Milledgeville. I work with local nonprofits, and I also sit on the board of the local Chamber of Commerce, so I'm well aware of the challenges that face Milledgeville, especially with economic development. I've had the great pleasure of working with Richard for the past 5 years, and I've seen him invest millions of dollars in this community. He hires local tradespeople, and he saved historic homes that were neglected for decades. If you've seen his work, then it speaks for itself. His houses are impeccable, inside and out. He does not cut corners, and he's not in this for a quick buck. He makes substantial investments, he uses high-quality materials, and he's looking for a long-term rate of return. He's not flipping properties. He's not taking these homes and breaking them into apartments like many developers have done. His work has impressed visitors to our community and raised local property values. His homes are not just some of the most beautiful in Milledgeville, they're also some of the safest. But he cannot make these investments and save these historic homes by renting them to single families. That model does not generate enough rent to pay for the renovations and upkeep. Milledgeville is home to 3 great colleges, and young people have come here to study for over 100 years. A recent trend, and one that's sure to continue, is that we see a lot of students coming from high-income families in the Atlanta area. And this has created a lot of tension, but it also creates a lot of opportunity. These students and their parents have much more spending power than your average Milledgeville citizen, and they're willing to pay for high-quality housing close to the college. And that's just the reality of the market. You saw it in your housing study. You also saw in the housing study that you can't prevent this. You can't zone out the type of people that live in these homes. We can, though, use this opportunity to improve our community. Instead of letting those dollars go to giant modern apartment complexes or to absentee landlords who don't take care of their properties, we can use that money to save some of Milledgeville's historic treasures. And that is Richard's business plan, and we need your assistance. In the past, you've allowed Richard to turn some of Milledgeville's oldest and most endangered houses into group residences. So a group of unrelated students could live together in a home that was previously limited to 3 unrelated people. In return for you granting him this, he provides a complete renovation, keeping the historic character and floor plan of the house, building off-street parking, and installing brand new electrical systems, plumbing, insulation, and fire suppression systems. He's a hands-on landlord who keeps a close eye on his property to ensure they are quiet and clean. He works very closely with planning and zoning and Mervyn Graham. And with group residents, the city has a right to annual inspections, a right that it does not have with any other housing. These are the exteriors of some of his beautiful properties that he's restored. And these are some of the interiors. Now, you will probably hear from some people who say, I like Richard's work, but I sure wish a family could go into these homes. However, the reality is that very few families can afford to renovate and maintain homes of this age and size. And the few people in this community who are doing it bought their homes long ago, and they were in much better condition, I'm certain, when they bought them than some of these homes today. They have been neglected and dilapidated over time. And many of these homes are not in primarily single-family neighborhoods. They are surrounded by apartment complexes and buildings with grandfathered multifamily use. So you have to ask yourself, even if we did have someone come into this community willing to spend $500,000 or $1 million to renovate this home and live in it with their family, would they really want to live in the areas that are now primarily student use? So what happens is the wealthy families come in, they build on the lake, and these historic mansions get knocked down or burned down. In the past few years, the historic homes that haven't been purchased by Richard have largely been purchased by GMC or Georgia College, who knocked them down to create parking lots. It's happened on South Elbert Street. It's happened on East Green Street. This is on South Wayne Street, 2 historic homes taken down to create parking. And just recently, just a few days ago, I think, West Thomas Street. This lovely single-story ranch home, nothing wrong with it that I could tell, knocked down to build a parking lot. And Georgia College is willing to pay substantial amounts for these homes just to wreck them. I looked up on the Tax Digest. I think they paid almost $400,000 for this home and then knocked it down shortly thereafter. This is likely what is going to happen to 241 West Montgomery Street if you do not allow Richard to save it. GMC and Georgia College are state entities. They are not subject to your zoning laws. They're not subject to your historic preservation laws. All they need to do this is a bulldozer. Few landlords put in the investment that Richard does, and many of these old homes have old wiring and other fire safety issues. The city has no right currently to inspect these buildings for safety issues, including fire safety. And this is just one example. We had a fire at a house on Liberty Street. This is a home that's sadly no more. This was a historic mansion that was on the corner of Liberty and West Washington. It burned down many years ago. And I think we all remember this one. This was just recently. This was a home that was occupied by a group of students legally. This was a grandfathered multi-use home. However, the landlord did not update it in the way Richard has. It has not been renovated. It did not have new and modern wiring. And then one day it caught on fire. And at least the report I've seen from the fire department was that this was likely caused by electrical shorts, which can be caused by some of this old wiring. Fortunately, nobody was hurt this time. But this is the danger we have when we don't allow someone like Richard to renovate these homes. That takes us to the property that we have today. With group residents, you get to inspect these properties before they are occupied and then every year thereafter. You can expect them for occupancy, you can expect them for fire safety, and for code compliance. And if they are not safe, you can deny the group residence permit. You can terminate it if it's already been granted. Now, group residence is not appropriate for every home in town. And in fact, it's been over 2 years since you last approved the group residence. It's been about 2.5 years since you last approved one, so it's been some time. But 241 West Montgomery is the perfect example of a home that would benefit from a group residence permit. It's a beautiful home, but it's fallen into serious decay. As Richard said, as Ms. Graham said, we are not asking you to approve a group residence today. All we're asking you to do is approve an overlay. What that means is you can possibly envision some sort of group use for this property. We then have to go back through P&Z first and present a specific plan, tell you how many people will occupy it, whether it will be fraternity, sorority, or none of the above, and we have to provide a design for off-street parking. At that point, you can say yes, you can say no, or you can ask for modifications. And even though we are not supposed to present a specific plan at this stage, I can tell you that we have discussed this with the neighbors, the people that surround this property, and we've come to an agreement with them that we will not be asking for fraternity use. And this was a sticking point at the Planning and Zoning hearing. In fact, I think it was a definitive issue at the Planning and Zoning hearing. And some of the people that came with concerns to the Planning and Zoning Committee are actually here today to support us. Local residents who Richard has talked to, and we have said this will not be a fraternity house. Also, Richard has agreed to forbid the use of alcohol and tobacco in these homes. So we have been talking to the local residents and addressing their concerns. This house is going to require substantial, expensive renovation. I mean, you look at the inside, it's fairly hideous. It needs a new everything. It needs new walls, ceiling, floors. It's a slate roof that will need to be repaired. Significant repair to the exterior brick on the home. You can see severe water damage to the plaster. And on the outside, these beautiful features, these beautiful windows, these beautiful casements and concrete, this all has to be redone. You can see the neglect over the years. Just these windows, you can imagine the cost that it will take to replace them. This is an overhead map of the neighborhood. I want you to show where this is, see where this is located. And I want to point out a few things about this overhead view. First of all, the property is huge. It takes up almost half a city block. In fact, it is almost exactly the same size as the giant student living complex that you approved across the street from it. Any other developer would buy this property and come here asking you to knock down the house and build a giant apartment complex. Richard is not asking for that. I would also make one heck of a parking lot for Georgia College. We're not asking for that. We don't want this home to turn into that. But Richard is probably the only person who's going to come to you with a plan to preserve this property in its current state. Also, this neighborhood is largely a rental neighborhood. There are certainly some single families that have beautiful houses and beautifully maintained yards. And in fact, you'll hear from a few today that are coming to support Richard. But they also recognize that a lot of the surrounding property is rental homes and commercial buildings. So looking east from the surrounding property on North Elbert Street, down south of it, there's the Huddle House. There's the farm supply store. And then, of course, the station, the large student housing complex just across from the street. And I'm not suggesting that all of you supported the station going there. Some of you may have voted against it, but the reality is that it is there now. It is a feature of the neighborhood. So you have to imagine what single family is going to pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars to renovate this home, the tens of thousands a year to maintain it, and wants to live there. Right across from a student apartment complex and surrounded by other student apartments. So a few slides of South Elbert Street. This is looking up the street. We see this is not, at least on this side, not a very quiet neighborhood. We've got a 4-lane road. We've got the station across the street. We have commercial buildings on both sides. Station at McIntosh, directly across the street from this property. What you see looking out the window on the east side. Just up from that, directly to the east of the building, another student apartment complex. These aren't going anywhere. South of the property on McIntosh Street, all rental properties. Take a look. Those are signs going all the way up the street for rent. At the end, we've got this, was once a beautiful historic building. Now it's been chopped into apartments, and it will remain that way. So this is a reality of the neighborhood. And then on the northeast corner, which is pretty much right on the corner where this house is located, we see it's a major intersection. Okay, not the prettiest view. And then on the north side, right out the front door, we see that a lot of these are single-family homes, but they're not likely filled with single families. They are rented to students. We see cars parked on the dirt, gravel spread in front of the homes. Again, not the prettiest view. Imagine what millionaire family is going to want to live in this property. You have a specific checklist that you're supposed to consider in deciding whether you grant our request. You're supposed to look at the character district of the district, the adjacent property, and also how it's changed, the station going in there. I already talked about those a bit, but I want to talk now about the last three things you're supposed to consider. Are there good reasons to rezone? Is this being done for the public good? And are you respecting private property rights? Well, what are the benefits of this group residence? It provides historic charm and modern appeal. That is the motto of your city. And it is the business model that Richard has carried out successfully for the past 5 years. He will provide regulated off-street parking. He's required to as part of the group residence permit. We'll have to submit a plan. You will have to approve it. He will do new HVAC units, new wiring, new insulation for this home, as well as all the other cosmetic and structural things that need to be done. He puts in fire prevention and suppression systems on each of his group residence homes. They are some of the safest buildings you will find in the city. He provides employment for local contractors. And once again, this is the only way the city gets to inspect these houses for fire and safety. All we're asking you to do today is to allow us to return and present a vision for the restoration and occupancy and the ability to save this beautiful historic home. I'm going to call Richard up for a few concluding remarks, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. Richard.
I was about 3 hours north of town here up in the mountains with some friends, and we looked up a local church to attend Sunday morning service. It was a beautiful day. And I just wanted to share the scripture with you. And this sign was actually bigger than the photograph on the wall here. But it actually spoke to my heart, because this says, "Those from among you shall build up old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in." From the man in Sunday school I learned to call the prophet Isaiah. So I do speak with humility here. I am here. I have a passion for historic architecture. I have a passion for my adopted hometown. I moved to this city in 2008. I lived here 8 years and wrestled with the renovation of my own personal residence before I dreamed of having a rental house downtown. And so it's just such a privilege to live and work and serve in this community. And that there's a great opportunity. We can be a light on the hill, and I encourage your vote in support for local employment. You know, when we look at poverty, when we look at unemployment, when we look at lack of education, it's all very spiritual in nature. And there's spiritual issues here at risk with our city. And we have a couple great colleges in this town. We have young men and women that graduate and they find employment and they have their lives in front of them. And you know, they already live in all these houses. 9 out of every 10 houses downtown are occupied by students. I'm inviting the city to come in and work with us, your code enforcement, your fire marshal, work with us, saving the historic nature and character of these homes and using them for what has already been in existence in our neighborhoods. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this amendment?
Favor still.
Oh,
So there's
wait a minute.
Anybody else in support of it?
I'm sorry. Is it anyone here that would like to speak in support of this amendment? Just get right over it. I'm sorry. Please state your name.
Hello, Amelia Pelton, 221 North Jefferson Street, and my husband Mark is here as well. Our property, the back part of our property completely abuts the proposed property. We have a double lot in the middle of the block. My husband and I have spoken extensively with Richard Sims, and we are in support of him purchasing this home and having it as a group home, with the stipulation that it not be a fraternity and that there not be alcohol, and I think he said fire. That was the big smoking. I don't know if you mean fires in the backyard. But anyway, that was our big stipulation. We've been here 25 years. This is our 26th year. and of being in this home at 221 North Jefferson, and we are a little pocket of single family on the North Jefferson side. I think we're the newest people on the block. I think everybody else has been there longer than 25 years. And we have parties and we have get-togethers and we love each other and we want to maintain our neighborhood in right there on North Jefferson. So we feel like that Mr. Sims is the best option that we have. Definitely. He takes care of homes. I personally have been in almost all of his homes that he has redone, and they are beautiful and they are top-notch, and I have observed him to be a good landlord and to take care of his property. We like very much the stipulation that it will be, you will go in and inspect it. I'm trying to find the right word. Every 6 months or whatever the ordinance says. We like that very much, that they would be inspected. So we are in support of this as he plans without a fraternity in the home.
Is he in favor?
Are you, Mr. Butts, are you in favor of?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right.
My name is Kendrick Butts, and I preside at 218 Fox Hill Road, and I also have my wife here with me. I want to, by the way, you got all my key points. Y'all touched on them, so I don't even really know what to say, so I'm gonna go from there. Okay. But I met Richard about 15 years ago when he came to Milledgeville. He had a project over in Milledgeville Manor where they had a fire, and I went over there and took care of put a bid in on it and won the bid and did the job. But I have personally witnessed and experienced his work. And by the way, all the projects y'all see, that I did all the electrical work on those projects, though. So I know.
Okay.
So I know what type of person he is. But what I admire about him and like about him the most is that it's very rare you see an investor that all contractors like them. I never heard any contractor say anything negative or bad about him. And we go inside a lot of his homes and do service calls and everything with people. You never hear any of his people that live there say anything bad about him. He do quality work. You've been an influence in my life by watching how you work and how you treat people and the diversification that you do. And I think it'll be a great thing we continue to have Richard here in Milledgeville, because he's a good person by heart, and he got the city of Milledgeville in mind when he do things. You know, it's not just about the money with him. It's about building relationships. I've seen the parents come in when people moving in, and I see how they interact with him and proud to have him there, and they feel safe with their kids living in his property. I've seen the homes. I've seen the type of money he put in them. And it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've seen him, I estimate millions of dollars that you do in your properties, you know. So it's been a joy and a pleasure working with you. I hope, if y'all have a chance, just go by. I don't know how any of you ever went by and looked at some of his property, but just in your busy schedule, take a time out and go look at some of his property. Look at the before and after pictures. And I know sometimes you say ordinance, you got rules you got to go by, but rules change. Situations change in Baldwin County. Sometimes we got to move forward. We got to be able to adapt and move with the future. Because the homes that he did, if he wouldn't have did it, I don't think nobody in Milledgeville would have did it, because they've been there 15, 20 years. Nobody never touched them. Nobody had the money around here to do that. And like I say, it's not about the money with him. It's about getting quality homes at a reasonable price, and about growing relationships and growing Milledgeville. I don't know what it's about Milledgeville, but he seemed to love Milledgeville. So, you know. And another thing I like about him, I've been here 53 years. I live here. Some properties I never seen and never paid any attention to. He gave me history on them. I'm like, man, I didn't know that. I didn't know all this. He's been here 100 years. So not only he's just gonna come in about a property, he's gonna know the history of it. Yeah. He's gonna try to keep everything original like it was. Cause I love architect. I love architect, and I love doing stuff like that. You know. I learned a lot. He made me want to get in real estate. Make me start buying a couple of cheap properties, and so trying to bring them up and do stuff. So, just watching him, you've been a great experience. You've been a great inspiration to me. A great, you know, I don't know. Just like I say, y'all get out and just walk around and see some of his properties, and just talk with the people before you make your decision. Or whatever, just maybe go and talk with some of the residents and talk with the people, not just the people living next door, but talk with the people living there and see how they feel about it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank
Thank y'all
you.
for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Butts. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Terry Green. I live at 3608 Sussex Drive. I'm a deacon and also chairman of property and grounds of First Baptist Church. I've known Richard for several years, and I've been real interested in the projects he's done downtown. In particular, the two on Liberty Street and one on Washington Street. That's the Dodo Hollis residences and also the Olivier Mansion. In all three cases, those buildings, the structures were dilapidated. They were in poor repair, bordering unlivable. Richard came in with a plan, with a set of goals, a set of rules, a set of regulations, redid those properties. They are now inhabited. We at First Baptist Church are very pleased with the transformation, particularly to the area. I invite you all to come to a service one Sunday morning and see what you look at when you look across the parking lot at the Olivier Mansion. It's truly a beautiful structure. We've got a relationship going with the young ladies that live there. It's Alpha Gamma Delta sorority. We've had a special church service for them, and several of them are attending our services now. Those three projects have really upgraded our neighborhood, and we're looking forward to his next project at 220 West Washington, which is already approved. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Pelton, 221 North Jefferson, and many of you probably saw me here several years back when I was fighting for the ordinance for no more than 3 unrelated individuals in a house. And then later, when it was introduced to make it possible to have group homes, I came back and fought against that too. So if you've been watching me in my seat here, my face is a little pained. Because it's kind of like having to choose between having a tooth pulled or getting a crown put on your tooth to save the tooth. We are, and I have to take exception, this is primarily a single-family neighborhood. Yes, if you go across the street in any direction, it's primarily rental. Our block until the last year and a half or 2 years has been probably 70 or 75% single family. So my support of Richard is grudging. I think the options that I have are to have Richard come in and do a beautiful job with the building, with the house, make it look like it should look, like the previous owner did not do, and care for the house. That is much preferable to me than to have a large apartment complex built back there, because that's been our biggest fear for several years. That's a huge piece of property, and that's very, very much a possibility. So, yes, I'm supportive. It's grudging support. I'd rather not have to be supportive. I would love to see our city, if the no more than 3 unrelated is not enforceable, then I would love to see City Council revisit that issue and put some teeth into it so that it can be enforceable. I would love to see City Council find a way, if individuals are going to rent houses to 10, 12, 15 students, but they're not going through this process like Richard is going through, there needs to be a way to find them on a regular basis. You know, there's got to be a way to get some order about this whole thing. So anyway, those are my comments for what they're worth. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of?
Good evening. I'm Joyce Olivier, and I live at 151 West Washington Street. I am in favor of Richard's plan. I I used to own the 240 West Washington Street home, which is now just beautiful. I could never have dreamed of what that house looks like. And I watched it from the day he started until he finished, and the girls gave me a tour of that home, and they are so proud. And I don't think that our choices here are more than two. Either it gets torn down when it dilapidates to where nobody would want it, or we let Richard make it into the mansion that it was when it was built and cared for. And everything else the speakers before have said about the surroundings and the thoroughfare with traffic 24/7. And I just think that this is our best solution to take care of the home and present it as a beautiful place in Milledgeville. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olivier. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the amendment? Please come back. You come back to the podium, Mr. Butts, and then make sure you address council when you're speaking.
I'm sorry, this is my first city council meeting, so I don't know the protocol.
Okay.
But the impact that he have on us economically and financially, I just seen him where he employed about 100 people locally. Diverse from all races, walk of life. They don't care, but I'm telling you, that's from the vendors where you spend money at in Milledgeville, through Lowe's Electric, the plumbing, with the electricians, the HVAC, the sprinkler systems, fire alarm system. It's going to be a great day if they lose a businessman like this in Milledgeville. And then he bringing the area up. He making the area look nice. So I just want to touch on that with the people that he employed. I know he employed at least 100 people. Through my company, 5, 6, 7 people. I see the HAC people out there got 7, 8, 10 people. I see the plumbers with 10, 15. It's going to be an impact if we lose this business. So if y'all can see, like I say, in your heart, go out and talk with the people and kind of look at this and see how can we bring Milledgeville to a level with the jobs that we are losing. It's refreshing to see an individual come in Milledgeville like this and want to spend money and want to be able to invest in us. It ain't just going to come in here trying to get a dollar. Ain't coming here just trying to manipulate the system to get money and charge high rent. But he really got a love for the people here and the history of Milledgeville. Like I say, I talk with the parents that come in with the kids and see how they talk with them, how you interact with the individuals and contractors and everything. Just think about that if you don't mind when you make your decision. Think about that. Think about everything from open mind to closed mind to everything. And weigh everything. That's all I'm asking. Weigh the impact financially, economically, and everything what it will have on the city of Milledgeville. To lose a businessman like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butts. All right. If we've heard from all that are in favor of the amendment, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the amendment? Take the podium, please, sir, and state your name for the record.
John Alton, 221 South Liberty Street. And I've been up here several times, and I have to steal Mark Pelton's words. It's grudgingly vote for disapproval because I do understand the circumstances in that neighborhood, as is the case with many neighborhoods. And I would like to reiterate, before I get to my main question, I would like to reiterate the amount of information that has been provided to City Council, I think should spur some action on your part, particularly as it relates to the homes that have more than 3 unrelated in them and have been that way now for several years. Which brings me to another question. If we can't enforce the 3 unrelated rule, are we going to be able to enforce sorority only, no fraternity, no drinking, and no tobacco? No. And that's the only reason that they're here, I think. Because they made an agreement. They made an agreement that that's the way it would be. And I think I will ask the panel the commission and the lawyer. Can we enforce that? Is that legal?
Enforce, I'm not sure what.
Can we enforce sorority only? No fraternity?
Well, our zoning ordinance allows the mayor and council to put conditions relative to any zoning approval. So yes, they can put conditions such as if it's being applied for as a sorority, that would mean somebody else can't come back later and apply for a fraternity.
Yes.
So, yeah, they can put conditions on any zoning decision that they make. Now, there are an abundance of laws relative to equal housing and all sorts of things that could preempt the city's zoning ordinance. I'm not giving an opinion on that, but there are no absolutes with respect to the zoning, other than the property can be zoned and rezoned again.
Yeah. If it's sold, I know it can be rezoned. I know. Now, if it's sold, those conditions go away.
If it is, well, I'm not going to say that that condition goes away if it is simply sold. I'm going to tell you that anyone, whether it's the current property owner or someone else, can seek to have it rezoned, could come in and ask for a change from a sorority to a fraternity. There's nothing that's going to bind that property owner or any other property owner from coming in and asking for that change.
I asked the question because I wanted some affirmative answers based on what the Peltons, and I know Mr. Hobbs and the rest of the residents on North Jefferson Street would desire the outcome with this property. Because that's one of the conditions I think they've asked, that be put into the acceptance of this property for special use, special group use.
Yeah, now keep in mind, the mayor and council are not considering tonight any restrictions relative to those issues of fraternities, sororities, smoking, drinking, those types of things. The only thing that's being asked of the mayor and council tonight is to make that property a part of the overlay.
Yes.
Which obviously the owner has said that his intention is to come in and seek, whether it's a group residence, which can be a certain number of people living there. They don't have to be a fraternity, but it can be a group of people living there, which could include male residents as well as female residents, sorority or fraternity. But that's not being what's decided.
No.
It is the first step in reaching that.
In the long term, you answer my questions. It does have to go back to P&Z with some, and I guess they can put some stipulations on it also. So it's going to occur again. The follow-up, and again, it's, I'm sorry, but it's a statement. Again, as some of the residents of the historic district, those on Liberty Street, those on Washington Street, and those on Jefferson Street, ask that you please do something about the homes that have 5, 6, and 7 people in them illegally, because and that changes a neighborhood without your saying the neighborhood is going to change, and they do. I do understand, and I think most of my neighbors do understand that it's a college town, and we love the college being here. But there also should be some restrictions, and also we should enforce some of the restrictions we've already placed within the historic district. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has a rebuttal towards the applicant?
I'd like to rebut if there's nothing else against.
You may, sir.
And I'll be very brief. I just want to absolutely clarify, the answer that Mr. Jordan gave. Can the city enforce this? Absolutely they can. In fact, this is the only way you can enforce it. You put it into the code with the approval, and if the house is found to violate it, the group residence permit goes away. We have to start this whole permit process over again, which takes months and months. Also, you have annual inspections. which are not just for fire safety and code. It's to make sure we have the correct occupancy and that it's not a fraternity when it was supposed to be a sorority or something else like that. So yes, this is the only way you can enforce it. And to respond to the idea that the city should do more about the landlords that aren't coming here and aren't doing it right, I agree. And I think one thing you should do is reward the one landlord in town who is trying to do this the right way. I ask that you approve our proposal. Thank you very much.
All right, are there any questions or comments from council at this time?
I have a question for Mrs. Pelton. I know you, and you're very particular, and and you want. Yes, we are, and I know you want things to be just right. You say this property is right in the backyard of your home?
Yes.
Okay.
Richard has assured us.
Step to the podium for me, please, ma'am.
We spoke for several hours in our home to Richard a couple of weeks ago, and I've known him, first of all, for how many years? A bunch of years. I've already been in all of his other property, like I stated. He has assured us, and through the wording that we will put in the special use, I trust that, and I hope I can also trust him as a friend and a person. He has promised that the woods that are behind our house where there's nothing will remain such. He has no intent to move them or to build. Okay? He has assured us that that we can help even choose the renters, whether it be, he's got 7 or 8 groups that want to go in there. Several Christian groups that may be male and female. But I'm hoping that we trust him that he is going to come through with this, as he says. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry you think I'm so particular.
Well, I am too. You know, we want things to be just right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a positive. That's a good thing.
Okay.
I did send many of you an email, of which I didn't get any response this past week, about another property that's right across the street from us that's already being advertised for up to 14 young ladies. That's the Davidson home. And so we're just watching to see. I know that doesn't have anything to do with it. I've got the microphone right now, so I'm going to say that. And I don't know what can happen with that, but I would hope that person would come forward as well and follow proper procedure, because it's already advertised on Facebook.
I would encourage you to check your spam box. Miss Graham responded to that email.
We had somebody to respond. Yeah.
I will go home and check it, sir.
Is there any other questions from any other council member at this time?
I just wanted to say, Mr. and Mrs. Pelton, I was interested when this first appeared in our radar. I was interested in what you all had to say, because I know where you are and I know where that property is. So when I saw you here, and I know how Dr. Pelton was particular about the 3 related and how much we went through with that and that discussion. So I wasn't really sure where you were with your opinion when I saw you here tonight, but I am listening to you, and the fact that you're supportive of it makes me feel better too, because I was concerned about the impact of you all there with what was being done. So I really do appreciate you coming out and stating your opinion.
Anyone else? All right, we thank everyone that spoke up in favor of or against the amendment. Keep in mind that tonight we're just only voting on the special use of the overlay for this property. So, Council, you've had an opportunity to ask questions. This concludes the presentation of the evidence in this matter. Members of council, you have heard the ordinance and the evidence presented. So do I hear a motion on the amendment?
Okay, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to not accept the findings of the Planning and Zoning Board, approve the request for the overlay.
Second.
It's been properly motion and second. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Mullins?
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster?
Aye.
Ms. Walden?
This concludes the public hearing. I will move to new business and ask the clerk to read Resolution R 2001-01 by caption.
A resolution authorized a maintenance and mowing agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation so as to allow for the construction of a plaza in the 100 block of West Hancock Street in downtown Milledgeville within the Georgia Department of Transportation right-of-way.
You have heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved. Second. Whichever way you want to record that,
Reynolds and
clerk.
Shinholster?
However,
All right, is there any other discussion on the proposed resolution? I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Mullins?
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster?
aye.
Ms. Walden?
The resolution is approved. At this time, I would like to announce that I appointed Ms. Vanetta Martin to the Milledgeville Housing Authority to fill the seat vacated by Carrie Jarrett. This term will run through November 2023. Council, you should have received the email in reference to this. All right, this concludes the items on the agenda. Is there any further business to discuss tonight?
Madam Mayor, may I say something very quickly? We've talked a little bit about enforcement of codes, so on and so forth, and I think it's something that remains on our minds. We've been tied up, unfortunately, too much with service delivery, and we are hopefully nearing a conclusion on that. So I think this is one of the many, many, many things that we want to look at going forward. Now, having said that, I'm going to get on the soapbox for just a second. I ride out Milledgeville, and I'm in particular an area that I tend to see more because it's in my district, and that is going up North Jefferson and then on to Log Cabin, which is not in my district, which is in the county. There is more trash strewn, and I know that there are streets everywhere that get it, but it just seems so obvious on these two particular streets, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have a recycling center as such on the end of Log Cabin Road, and that people do not secure trash in their open vehicles, whether it's pickup trucks or the back of a SUV open or whatever. I know there's enough littering that goes on, but I'm going to plead while I'm on TV. Please tie trash bags down. One trash bag can make a place look like a third world country. It just goes everywhere, and there's no sense in it, any whatsoever. Stepping down off my soapbox. Thank you.
Anybody else want to get on the soapbox? Well,
I'm starting off 2020 right.
All right. Well, there being no further business to discuss, I would like to make mention tonight, I meant to do it at the beginning, Stephen Hauser was given the honor of Librarian of the Year award for our library, so we want to make sure we send out all our congratulatory wishes to him for receiving that honor. So with no further business to discuss.
Actually, it's the State Librarian of the Year.
State Librarian. of the
State
Year.
Librarian of the Year.
Okay, so make sure you all congratulate Mr. Hauser on one that the city always backs. Would there be no other business to discuss tonight? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.